Have you ever wanted to drive $1 million worth of Porsches?
I did just that and have driven them on the road and track. But driving so many Porsches can make you numb to what makes them great. Knowing what to expect when going from Porsche to Porsche can help if you are choosing the Porsche you want to take home.
Here are 20 brutal truths that I've learned from driving over $1 million worth of Porsches.
Lesson 1.
Have you ever experienced a car stalling in traffic?
This can be an unnerving experience as the car becomes silent in the middle of the road. Well, this 2012 Porsche 911 Carrera S gives you that experience at every stoplight. That's thanks to it being the first generation of the 911 to include an auto stop-start feature. The first thing I was shown when getting into the 911 was how to turn off the feature, because auto stop-start is annoying. Lesson 2. Imagine you are driving in a modern supercar going through the gears as you blast along the road. These days, rowing your own usually means using paddle shifters. The Porsche PDK is one of the best dual clutch transmissions out there. The thing is that early PDK cars used a rocker switch setup instead of paddles. The good thing is if you buy one of these Porsches, you can install a newer steering wheel because an upgrade to paddle shifters makes things better. Lesson 3. When Dodge released the original Challenger SRT Hellcat, I was invited to drive the new Challenger lineup on the road and track. On the track, the 707 horsepower Hellcat was put to good use in the straights. But the story was completely different on the road. At legal speeds with traffic, the entry-level V6 powered 305 horsepower Challenger SXT model had no issues keeping up. But what does this have to do with Porsche? The thing is that the 2012 Porsche 911 Carrera S has 400 horsepower. That's plenty of power to pass most traffic when needed, but not so much power that you can't use most of it on the road at legal speeds in traffic without going to jail. In fact, 400 horsepower is just about perfect for the road. Lesson 4. What do you think of when you picture a sports car? It's probably an aerodynamic car blasting through the roads with an exhaust note that sounds like a symphony. The thing is, most modern Porsches just sound okay. The fact is, unless they are pushed hard, the exhaust note isn't very loud. That is, unless you have the Porsche Sports exhaust, and then a push of this magic button makes things perfect. So yeah, the Porsche Sports exhaust makes a huge difference. Lesson 5.
Have you ever driven on a go-kart track?
The kart feels so nimble, and even though it is on a small track, it feels like you have plenty of room to drive a good line. Having driven Porsches on a track, I can confirm that even their modern large cars have plenty of space to hit the apex perfectly in that environment. When driving a newer Porsche 911 on public roads with narrow lanes, you can feel the greater size compared to older Porsches. This was extremely noticeable driving my 1999 Porsche Boxster after driving a newer 911. The old Boxster was smaller and on public roads gave a feeling closer to the track due to it taking up less of the lane. The thing is, the 2013 Boxster S and Cayman S have a smaller size that is close to the early Boxster, and that size is more fun than the newer 911 on the road. Lesson 6. When I drove newer Porsches after my 1999 Porsche Boxster, there was a noticeable difference. The early Boxster wasn't the most powerful car Porsche produced, but the steering feel is just about perfect for a wonderful drive. The thing is that the 2012 911 and 2013 Cayman and Boxster were the first generation of each model with electric power steering. While the steering feel in the newer cars is decent, it just isn't quite up to an older Porsche. Lesson 7. Have you ever known someone that had a cool, fun car and then they had kids? I personally know someone that sold his 1994 Porsche 911 to buy a family car, and he certainly wished he still had that 911 today. Well, Porsche's original solution for this is the Porsche Cayenne. The SUV gives you a performance car feel while having plenty of space for carrying all the equipment that comes with kids. Porsche now has the Macan, but the storage is minimal when compared to the Cayenne. The thing is that the Porsche Cayenne just makes hauling the family more fun. Lesson 8. Over the years, I've experienced every engine layout that Porsche has to offer. Handling characteristics change largely dependent on the engine and transmission placement. The 924 and 944 have great handling that is neutral, but being older, their performance specs aren't near a modern Porsche. The rear engine layout of the 911 offers more traction out of a corner. But even with how well the modern 911 takes a corner, you still need to set up the car correctly going into the corner. The Porsche Cayman and Boxster are a different story. They offer plenty of power, especially in S-form, and both the Boxster and Cayman are perfectly balanced, allowing for you to keep more speed through the corner. Lesson 9. I've experienced Porsches with a PDK, Tiptronic, and manual transmission. On the track, the PDK is so good that in automatic mode, it seems to read your mind and will have you in the best gear at the right time. The Tiptronic is a bit slower shifting, but with some exceptions where the 0 to 60 mile per hour time was faster than a manual. The advantage of the Tiptronic is if things go wrong, it's less expensive to fix than the PDK. But if you're not in traffic and you don't have any issues, the manual is a more involved experience. Because the PDK has lightning fast shifts, but the manual is more fun. Lesson 10.
Have you ever looked at a Porsche Panamera from the side?
It doesn't exactly look like a track-focused machine. A while ago, when Porsche had just redesigned the Panamera, they had me out to drive the lineup on the road and track. What stood out for me was how the Panamera seemed to shrink around you on the track. It handled so much better than expected, and especially the turbo model was plenty quick in the straights. Most owners will only drive their Panamera on the road, but it is great on the track. Lesson 11. Have you ever been on a roller coaster? The sensation of taking corners at speed, providing excitement at every twist and turn. The thing is that many of these aren't really that fast. For example, Tron at Disney World's Magic Kingdom feels crazy fast, but it only hits a top speed of 60 miles per hour. Much of the reason of the sense of speed is the feeling of the wind hitting you as you ride. But what does this have to do with Porsche? Well, in a Porsche Boxster, you can get a similar feeling when driving with the top down. The one thing to remember is because of the sense of speed, open air driving in a Boxster changes how you drive, and you may find yourself driving a bit slower than expected if you're not watching the speed. Lesson 12. Have you ever tried to take a road trip with a family in a sedan? It's amazing how much a family needs. In a sedan, the trunk will fill up quickly. Then you will end up with passengers needing to carry items in the car. That's one thing that makes the Porsche Cayenne a great family vehicle. While a Cayenne is fun, and especially in turbo form, is capable of performance that one would only expect in a pure sports car. But because the Cayenne has a lot of luggage space, it makes that quick driving practical. Lesson 13. Have you ever watched a pendulum swing? The weight at the bottom of the pendulum gives a visual picture of what the weight distribution of a rear engine layout is like. Inherently in a fast corner, if not set up correctly, the rear end will try to become the front end. Over the years, Porsche has worked their engineering magic and has done a ton with the suspension to make the handling much more predictable. I drove a 2012 Porsche 911 Carrera S, and that was the first year the 911 used torque vectoring. Thanks to how the technology adjusts power distribution to individual wheels, it makes the 911's handling incredibly predictable. Lesson 14. Over the years, I've been able to experience most models that Porsche has made. The engines have been in the front, middle, or rear. The cost to purchase what I've driven range from $250 all the way up to $200,000. The thing is, while some had little power but handled like a dream and others offered a huge amount of horsepower, the core Porsche driving feeling is always the same. Lesson 15.
Have you ever had a 6-year-old say, "Let's race"?
If you are like me and not in the best of shape, then the 6-year-old probably had no problem winning the race. You can have the same experience driving a Porsche. When Porsche had invited me to drive the Panamera lineup on the track, I was following the other Panameras in the group when suddenly I wasn't able to keep up with the group. Looking around to see why the car just couldn't keep up revealed I had hit the Sport button. While all the other cars were in Sports Plus, I wasn't, and it showed. But be careful on public roads because the Sports Plus mode turns it into a track-ready beast. Lesson 16. What is the greatest Porsche ever made? You might consider the 550 Spider, 917 race car, or 911 Carrera S 2.7. But of Porsche supercars, my pick is the Carrera GT. But very few people will get a chance to own one of these wonderful machines. We can't all be Doug DeMuro. If you look at a 911 Cayman or Boxster from around 2013, they have become a tempting purchase from an affordability perspective. But how does this relate to a Carrera GT? Because they have a Porsche Carrera GT inspired interior. That means there's a chance for the rest of us to get a bit of that Carrera GT feeling. Lesson 17. Have you ordered takeout for 6 people, but when you get home, there are only 4 meals in the bag? There's obviously something missing. That was the reaction of many Porsche enthusiasts when the Boxster and Cayman went under the 718 model designation and the engine went from a flat 6 to a turbocharged 4. The 718 Boxster and Cayman base and S models have great performance. However, the flat 6 that was used from the 1997 through 2017 model year provided a more linear power curve and the sound of a flat 6 whale. And that's why the flat 6 is great in the Boxster and Cayman. Lesson 18. Have you ever been on a road trip on a hot day? If you drove a 1999 Porsche 911 or Boxster and asked a Porsche engineer if a sports car should have cup holders, they would simply say 9. But Porsche is all about engineering and they love a challenge. So no wonder by the time you get to the 2010 Porsche 911, they said challenge accepted and made the most advanced cup holders in the world. Those cup holders showed the level of engineering in the car. Lesson 19. Have you tried to change the air conditioning settings on a modern car? In most newer cars, all the settings are built into the infotainment system, all driven by digital screens. The good thing is, even the latest Porsche isn't all infotainment controlled, though it has moved a lot to screens. The thing is, most of us will look for a used Porsche and let someone else get hit with depreciation. Well, if you're looking for a 10-year-old Porsche, you'll get a sea of buttons. This lets you learn their location and you can quickly adjust things like the air conditioner without taking your eyes off the road. Because push buttons are so much better than screens. Lesson 20.
When you think of Porsche, what do you picture?
More than likely, you pictured the iconic Porsche 911 that has been with us for over 60 years. But is the 911 actually the best Porsche on the road? About 10 years ago, when I was invited to drive a Porsche 911 Carrera S, Boxster S, and Cayman S back to back, the 911 was certainly the fastest and most upscale, and the Boxster offered wind-in-the-hair fun. But the Cayman S was the best driving car for the road.
The thing is, this is just one person's experience with Porsches. But I've interviewed over 1,000 Porsche owners and learned this.